Dan bought 7 DVDs for $19.99 each and used 5 coupons, each offering a discount of 45% off per DVD. How much did Dan pay for the 7 DVDs if there was a 6% sales tax? Is the answer A, B, C, D, or E? So now's your chance if you'd like to. You can pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need, and if you get stuck, don't worry because we're just going to go over the answer. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to try this out if you wanted to. So let's talk about this question here. And there are quite a few steps to get this question right. And maybe you did this question a little bit differently from the way that I'm going to show you here. But the first thing I want you to see here is that, all right, there are 7 DVDs total that he's buying. And for 5 of those DVDs, he's going to use a coupon. So let's figure out the cost of one DVD with 45% taken off. Let's start there. So I'm going to take $19.99 for one DVD, multiply that by 0.45. And that is going to tell me that 45% of $19.99 is $8 and 8.9955. And I'm just not going to round for now. I'm just going to leave this as it is. Okay. So 45% of $19.99 is this number, 8.9955. So now to figure out the cost of one DVD with that 45% off applied to it, I now have to go back to the $19.99 and I'm going to subtract 8.9955. Okay, I know this is hard and tedious. There's a lot of steps here, but please, if you stick with me here, I hope this will make sense by the end. So what I've just figured out here is the cost of one DVD with that 45% off discount applied. So that's what this $10.99 is right here, okay? So I figured out again the cost of one DVD with 45% off. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that $10.99 and I'm going to multiply it by 5. All right, so why am I multiplying this $10.99 by 5? So if you're stuck and you're having trouble following this, just stop right now and ask yourself, what am I doing at this step of the question? Well, I'm doing this because $10.99 is the price of one DVD with 45% off. And we know that he has 5 coupons, that each coupon is going to take 45% off. So that's why I'm doing 10.99 times 5. Okay, and so when I do that, I figure out that the price of those 5 DVDs that he uses a coupon for each one of them, all right, the total amount he's going to pay for 5 of the DVDs is $54.95. So this is for 5 of those 7 DVDs, because remember, for 5 of those 7 DVDs, he's going to get a 45% off discount. So now what I have to do is figure out the total cost for the remaining 2 DVDs. Because remember, 7 DVDs total, 5 of them he's going to get 45% off on, which is why we have this 54.95 number. So to figure out the cost of the remaining 2 DVDs, you have to do $19.99 times 2. Now, why am I doing $19.99 times 2? Well, that's because I need to figure out the cost of 2 DVDs, okay, that are at full price. So, again, for 5 of the DVDs, he's going to pay a price of 45% taken off. And then for the remaining 2 DVDs, he's going to pay full price. So that's why I have $39.98. This is the number. This is the full price value for those 2 DVDs. All right. So if you're following along right now, great work. I know this is hard. I know this is a lot of steps. So I just want you to know that, whether you're getting this or whether you're confused, all right, you are doing good work right now just by being here. All right. Because I know this isn't easy. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the cost of those 5 DVDs and the cost of the 2 DVDs, and I'm going to add them up. So what I get then is 94.93. And if you rounded, your numbers might be a little bit different. Okay? So we have 94.93. All right. Now, it would be tempting to pick C and move on to the next question. And if you got this far, you did a really, really phenomenal job. However, we have to take this one step forward because it says here that there's 6% sales tax. So what I'm going to have to do is take this 94.93, and I'm going to have to figure out that 6% sales tax. All right, so I'm going to do 94.93 times 0.06 because 6% is equal to 0.06. Okay, and so when I do that, I get 5.6958. All right, so the sales tax that he's going to pay is going to be $5.70, something like that, after I round it. All right, so then the total cost that he's going to pay, all right, I go back to the cost of the DVDs, which is $94.93, and I add to it that sales tax of 5.6958. All right, and again, if you rounded at any step, if you rounded differently than me, your numbers might be a little bit different, but you should end up with something pretty close to E, all right? So if you got this right, you did a really great job. If not, just for trying, be proud of yourself because this is not an easy question and there's a lot of steps here. So now I'm going to show you the written solution up here on the screen. You can take all the time you need to pause the video and study that, and when you're ready, we'll go on to the next question. So this video's champion shoutout goes to a test taker who just recently finished the GED. And at one point, she had a setback and she had already taken all the subjects but missed passing by 1 point with the RLA with a score of 144, but persevered and bounced back and finally passed the RLA and is now moving on and is done with all 4 subjects. And I just wanted to share this story right now just to show you what's possible. And, hey, setbacks are going to come up and they're hard, but hey, we're going to get through this, keep working hard and keep persevering, and someday you'll be done too. The following figure consists of a square, a right triangle, and a rectangle. And note that I added this in here to clarify that this is a right triangle. What is the perimeter and area of the figure, both rounded to the nearest whole number? Now, this is another hard question here, so pause the video, try your best with this question, and when you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so if you got this right or wrong, I don't really care right now because it's all about the learning. And, with some of these really hard questions, note that these are harder than most of the questions on your test. And hopefully, even though these questions are tough, it'll still help you pick up some skills that you can use on some of the easier questions. I find that sometimes looking at some of the hardest cases and examples is a good way to learn some skills that you can apply on and to get more of the easier questions right. So there's several important skills here to see. First is that if we can break this up into 3 shapes. We've got a square, a triangle, and then right down here is our rectangle. Now, the thing to know about a square is that for a square, all of the sides are equal in length. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in the length of each side of the square. All right, 10, 10, 10, and 10. And what do you know? The square and the triangle share this side right here. Okay, so this side of the square is length 10, and we also know that this side of the triangle is also length 10. So let's come down here and let's look at our rectangle. So for the rectangle, 2 of the sides are going to match, and then the other 2 are going to match. So what I mean by that is, here we see that this side is length 11, and we know that this side right here is also going to be length 11. Okay, so these 2 sides on the square are going to match. And these 2 sides right here, okay, are going to match as well. So we know that this side of the rectangle is 32, and the corresponding side over here is also going to be 32. Okay, so what we now know is that this side of the triangle is going to be 10, and this side down here is going to be length 11. So the side that we're missing, though, is this side of the triangle right here. Okay, so we don't know what the length of this triangle is here. So to get the perimeter, we're going to look at all the numbers on the outside of the figure and add them up. But first, we have to figure out what this side of the triangle equals. So for a right triangle, okay, the formula that you're going to be using is what's called the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, so in this case, we'll take one side of the triangle and we'll make it a. So we can say that 10 squared is our a. And the other side of the triangle, the base, is 11. So I'm going to plug that in to the formula for b. Okay. And this is going to tell me what the missing side is squared. Okay, so 10 squared plus 11 squared, and calculators are fair game, is going to give me 221. So 221 is equal to c squared. But I don't want c squared, I just want c. So I'm going to have to take the square root of this 221. All right, and the square root of 221 is 15. So we know that side c is equal to 15. All right, so this side that was in question is equal to 15. All right, and we had to use the Pythagorean theorem formula to figure out that this side was equal to 15. So now all I'm going to do is take all of the sides on the outside of the figure. So I've got this 10 here, got this 10 here, I've got this 10 up here. All right, so I'm going to add those up. And then I have to come over here to our triangle. And for the triangle, the only side that gets included is this side right here facing the outside, right, which is 15. So I'm going to put 15 here. Okay, so it's only the sides of the shape that are facing the outside. All right, so this 11, this side right here won't get included, neither does this side right here. Now, I'm also going to include 32, 11, and this other 32 because they're also on the outside. All right, so I've got 32 plus 11 plus another 32. Okay, and like I said, calculators are fair game here. Okay, and so I add these up, and I see that the perimeter is equal to 120. The perimeter is equal to 120. But we also have to get the area, all right? So we're not quite off the hook yet. So we're going to have to, let's break these up into individual shapes and find the area for each shape here. So the area of a square, let me abbreviate this as ASQ for square. All right, so the area of the square is equal to side times side. All right, so all of the sides of the square are the same length. So I pick two of those sides and I multiply them. So I do 10 times 10. And easy enough, I see that the area of the square is 100. Okay, so now let me do the same with the rectangle. So let me put a rec here. So for the area of the rectangle, all you do is take the two different sides and multiply them. So let's do 11 times 32. All right, 11 times 32. So in other words, the length times the width of the rectangle. And if you can't remember which is the length and which is the width, which commonly happens sometimes because you have enough to cram into your head anyway, you just pick the two different numbers. So you don't want to do 32 times 32. You would just remember for the area of the rectangle, the two sides that are different lengths, like 32 and 11, that's what you want to multiply, all right? And the answer is 352. Okay, so lastly, the area of the triangle. Now, to find the area of a triangle, what you have to do is you have to take the base times the height, and you have to divide that by 2. Okay, so the base of the triangle is this side right here, which is 11. And the height is this side right here, which is 10. Okay, and I multiply these together and I divide them by 2. And if I plug that in my calculator, 11 times 10 divided by 2, I see that the area of the triangle is 55. Okay. So now what I want to do is I need to take each area here, and I'm just going to add them all up to find the total area of the figure. So the area of the square we calculated is 100, and the area of the rectangle we know is 352. Okay, and the area of the triangle we know is 55. Okay, so we crunch the numbers here, we add these up, and we'll see that when all is said and done, D is the final answer here. All right, so let's just recap here what we've learned here, because this is actually a lot of skills packed into this one question. So we've learned how to, we've learned that a square has 4 sides that are all equal. A rectangle has 2 sides that match and another 2 sides that match. We've learned how to use the Pythagorean theorem, this a squared plus b squared equals c squared, to find the missing side of a right triangle here. And we've also looked at how to do the perimeter by just adding up all of the faces here on the outside of the figure. And we've also learned how to calculate the area of a square, the rectangle of a square, and the area, or I'm sorry, not the rectangle of a square, the area of a rectangle and the area of a triangle. All right, so there's a lot of skills here. This is a hard question. This is actually a very hard question, but just note that there's a lot of different skills here, all right? If you had trouble with this, there's no worries, no shame at all, because this is a harder question. So in every video, I pick out what, in my opinion, is the hardest question, and I call it the Champions Challenge question. But with this video here, all of these questions were actually pretty tough, so this was a hard choice. And several of these questions could have been the Champion Challenge question, but I picked this one. So let me know down below, do you think this was the hardest question, or was it something else? What is the slope equation in the x and y intercepts of the line below? A, m equals -9, y equals 4 over 3x minus 4, x-intercept equals 3, y-intercept equals -4. B, m equals 4 over 3, y equals 4 over 3x minus 4, x-intercept equals -4, y-intercept equals 3. Or is it C, D, or E? So let's have you pause the video to try to figure this out. Take all the time that you need, and when you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so this is another pretty tough question here. And there are several different ways to approach this, but let's first start by calculating the slope. I think that is a good starting point here for us. So to calculate the slope, and if you take nothing else away from this explanation other than this, then I think that you'll at least benefit, because this is important to know for your test. The formula for slope is y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. And this little m right here, this is the symbol used for slope. Okay, so to start off by calculating the slope, we're going to pick 2 points on this line. So I'm going to pick ones that are easy to see. Like let's pick right here, and let's pick right here. Okay. And so part of getting this question right involves understanding how to read graphs and to find the coordinates of a point on a graph. And earlier in this video series, we've looked at, simpler examples of this. But basically, this point right here, all right, the x coordinate is 3. And the y coordinate is 0. All right, so I'm going to call this x1, and I'm going to call this y1. Now, what are the coordinates of this point right here? Okay. Well, we see that for our x coordinate, all right, it's a 0. And for our y coordinate, it's -4. Okay, so I'm going to call this x2, and I'm going to call this y2. And if you're completely lost right now, you might want to review how to identify coordinates on a graph. Okay, but basically all you need to know, just really quickly right here, all right, the up and down axis is called the y-axis, and the left and right axis is called the x-axis. All right, so if I look at this point right here, for example, all right, going up and down, we see the y value would be -4. All right, and right here in the center of the graph, this is 0 on our x-axis. So this corresponds to 0 on the x-axis. So that's why the x coordinate here is 0 and the y coordinate is y2. And if you're still unclear on this skill, I do have other videos on my channel where we talk about this. So let's talk about how to do the calculation right now, though. So all I'm going to do, all right, again, I just pick any 2 points on this line. It could be maybe this point right here, this point here. And it doesn't matter, any 2 points on the line that you want. And you are just going to plug the coordinates into this formula. So my y2 is -4, and my y1 is 0. So the top part of the equation is going to be -4 minus 0. Now downstairs here, I do x2 minus x1. So my x2 is 0, and my x1 is 3. All right, so -4 minus 0 is -4. 0 minus 3 is -3. And since it's negative divided by a negative, these negative signs are going to cancel out, and we'll see that my slope is 4 over 3. All right, so again, I know I've said this several times now, but if you are having a lot of trouble understanding how I calculated the slope, then it wouldn't hurt to brush up on some of the basics of slope calculations. I've got entire videos where I show examples of that, and I've done it in several earlier examples in this series here. So that's why I'm going kind of fast, but basically what we can do now is we can rule out answer choice A and answer choice E, all right? Because A, the slope would be -9, which we know is wrong, and E, they have the slope as 3/4. So both of these answer choices, all right, we can completely rule these out. Okay, so we've calculated our slope. Now, let's skip the equation and let's go look at the x and y intercept. So the x-intercept is just wherever this blue line crosses the x-axis. Now, we've already said that this line right here, this is what we call our x-axis, okay? So the blue line crosses over the x-axis right here where x equals 3. So simple enough, the x-intercept, all right, the x-intercept equals 3. So basically, I can rule out any answer choice that doesn't have 3. So for example, answer choice B, it says x-intercept equals -4. Well, that is incorrect. So we can take B out. All right, so great work if you're following along right now. And right here, now we can talk about the y-intercept. So the y-intercept, this is our y-axis right here, up and down. So wherever the blue line crosses this y-axis, which here that happens at -4, okay, that tells us that the y-intercept is -4. So unfortunately, that doesn't really help us eliminate anything because both of answer choices C and D have -4 listed as the y-intercept. Okay, so the next thing to talk about here would be the equation. And in this case here, we don't actually have to calculate the equation. But if you did, you'd use this formula, y minus y1 equals slope times x minus x1. All right, so this is called the point slope formula. And we don't have to do the full calculation here to figure out the equation, fortunately. All right, but this is another equation that you'll want to be familiar with. And if you've never seen this before, that's perfectly fine. I'm not going to get into it too much here in this video, but just know that, if you have not studied this equation yet, you'll want to pull out your textbook and study slope and equation of the line, or also look at my channel. I have several videos where I've talked about this, including earlier in this video playlist here. We have gone over several examples of this. But basically, in this equation right here, okay, this slope right here, all right, is going to come before the x. So basically, y equals mx plus b. All right, so if you plug the numbers in, if I took my y1, which I know is 0, and put it in here, and if I took my x1, which I know is 3, and plugged it in here, and I crunch the numbers, all right, I would eventually get an equation that looks like this. Y equals mx plus b. Okay, now if we look at answer choice C, we see that, for the equation, it's written y equals 4/3x minus 4. And this makes sense because we know that the slope is 4/3. All right, so the first part of this equation is the slope. All right, we have y equals the slope right here. We know the slope is going to be 4/3. And this b term is also always going to be the x-intercept. So we already know that the x-intercept is going to be -4. And so right here in this equation, we see y equals the slope times x minus 4. And so this checks out. This is the correct answer, is C. All right, so I've said this once, I've said it many times. If you struggle to follow this or struggle with this question, you may want to go brush up on slope and equation of the line questions. All right, and then if you come back and try this one again, I think it's going to make some more sense. So if you struggle with this, don't worry about it too much for right now. Just know that before your test, you're going to want to review slope a little bit more, whether it's on my channel or in a textbook or somewhere else. All right, just keep that in mind. And unfortunately, the written solution is way too big to fit on the screen, so unfortunately, I'm not going to show that for this question. Which of the following is false? Is it A, B, C, D, or E? So this question is a really good test of exponent and power rules, and this is also an advanced type of question here, as are most of the questions in this video. So if you get this wrong or just completely get stumped by it, don't worry at all. All right, it's just for the learning and the knowledge right now. So let's have you pause the video. We don't care if you get this right or wrong. Like I said, it's all about the knowledge, and I'll turn it over to you to try this out. Okay, so for this question, let's just break each of these answer choices down, and hopefully this can be a learning moment here if you had trouble with this question. So we've got parenthesis x raised to the power of 2/3, parenthesis raised to 18. So basically, I can take this 18 and multiply it by 2. All right, so if I do that, this is going to look like x raised to the power of 36 over 3. Okay. And if you use your calculator and you do 36 divided by 3, you'll see that the answer is 12. So this all simplifies down to x raised to the power of 12. So A is correct, and I'm going to rule it out now because we're looking for which of the following is false. Okay, so let's look here at B. So we've got x to the 3 over 5 times y to the 1 over 3, and we've got parentheses around this, and this is all raised to the power of 30. So again, I can take this 30, multiply it by 3, and I can rewrite this as x raised to the 90 over 5, because 30 times 3 is 90. Okay, and I also am going to take this 30 and multiply it by this 1. And if you're wondering why I'm doing this, these are just applications. I'm just applying, power and exponent rules. All right, that's why we're doing this. So 1 times 30 is 30, and we'll leave that 3 here. So this is now x raised to the 90 over 5 times y raised to the 30 over 3. So let's do a simplification here, all right? What is 90 divided by 5? 90 divided by 5 is 18. So x to the 90 over 5 simplifies to x to the 18th power. And what is 30 divided by 3? Well, 30 divided by 3 is 10. So this y to the 30 over 3 simplifies to y raised to the power of 10. So this is also correct. All right, so let's skip C for now. And we've got 64 raised to the power of negative 3 over 2. So the power rule, or kind of trick you need to know here, is that 64 raised to the negative 3 over 2. All right, this is the same as 1 over 64 raised to the positive 3 over 2. All right, I know I'm going kind of fast here. All right, these are just basic exponent rules. And I think if you go back to the first couple videos in this playlist and you review those if you haven't seen those already, we've looked at more simple and basic examples of this, as well as I have an entire video on exponent and power rules. So if you're having a little bit of trouble following this, it might be because, maybe you haven't studied those exponent and power rules yet, or at least haven't studied them, closely enough yet. And that's perfectly fine. We're just practicing right now. But if you do 1 over 64 raised to the 3 over 2 in your calculator, you'll see that this does indeed equal 1 over 512. So this is also right, meaning it's not false. Okay, so what about E? X to the 1 plus y to the 0 plus z to the negative 1 over 3 equals x plus 1 over z raised to the 1/3. Well, x raised to the power of 1, any number raised to the power of 1 is just that number. So x raised to the 1, that does equal x. Now, y to the power of 0. Well, anything raised to the power of 0, I don't care if it's 800, I don't care if it's 2, I don't care if it's y. Anything raised to the 0 power is just going to give us 1. So y to the 0 power is going to be 1. So far, so good. Now we've got the z raised to the negative 1 over 3. Well, we can rewrite this as 1 over z raised to the 1 over 3. All right, kind of like what I just did with 64. We said with D, we had 64 raised to the negative 3 over 2. And I said that's the same as 1 over 64 to the positive 3 over 2. Z raised to the negative 1/3 is the same as 1 over z raised to the positive 1/3. So E checks out as well. So C is wrong here. So on screen is the written solution, and it's small and kind of hard to read, but I didn't have a better way to fit this all on the screen than this. So you can pause the video, take all the time you need to study this. There is a lot to take in here, and whenever you're ready, you can unpause the video and move on to the next question. If Barnes Street has 1 stop sign for every 4 blocks, how many stop signs will Dave pass if he travels 16 blocks? So now would be a good time to pause the video, see if you can figure this one out, and as always, if you get stuck, don't worry about it, we're just here to learn, we don't care if you get it right or wrong. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to solve this. So basically here, what we have to see is that we've got 1 stop sign for every 4 blocks, and we're looking for how many stop signs Dave's going to pass. So if Dave travels 16 blocks, I'm just going to write 16B, where B is an abbreviation for blocks. And I'm going to take the fact that we know that there's one stop sign for every 4 blocks, all right? And I'm going to set this up like this. So I'm going to put 1S for one stop sign, and I'm going to put 4B down here for the 4 blocks. So I'm just taking this information, one stop sign for every 4 blocks, and the fact that he's traveling 16 blocks, and I'm going to multiply 16 times 1 over 4B. And hopefully what you'll see is that the units will cancel out because B divided by B it just cancels out. All right, and 16 times 1s is obviously just 16s, or in other words, 16 times 1 divided by 4 is 4. All right, see, I looked over here and I realized that 16 wasn't one of the answer choices, and I didn't remember the answer being none of the above when I wrote this question. So yeah, a little math error there on my part, but the answer here is 4 stop signs. Now, if you were able to just see that it should be 16 divided by 4 without having to set it up this way, then hey, that's an even better way to do it. But if you weren't, that's okay too. You can just set it up so that the units cancel like I've shown here. And if you had trouble with that, I'm going to put a solution on the screen, but the solution is going to show you an even different way to look at this. And so you can pause the video and study this solution. This is just showing you another way to think about this question here.